I'm going to tell you something that the media won't say out loud, that politicians refuse to acknowledge, and that most people are too afraid to admit. Millions of Americans, and I mean millions, believe that this country is heading towards civil war. Not in some distant future, not as some abstract possibility, but soon, within the next few years. And the reason nobody in power wants to talk about it is because acknowledging it makes it real. Saying it out loud means admitting that everything they've told us about unity, progress, and healing has been a lie. But here's what they don't understand. You already know. You can feel it. You see it every single day. The tension that's building, the anger that's simmering just below the surface, the sense that we're all standing on the edge of something we can't come back from. So today I'm going to break down exactly why millions of Americans have come to this conclusion. I'm going to show you the truth that's hiding in plain sight. And I'm going to explain why ignoring this problem isn't going to make it go away. It's only going to make it worse. If you've been feeling like something is fundamentally broken in America, like we're past the point of no return, like the divisions are too deep to heal, I need you to stay with me. Because what I'm about to share with you is something you won't hear anywhere else. Let me start with what they want you to believe. They want you to believe that America is strong, that our democracy is resilient, that we've been through tough times before and we'll get through this too. They point to the Civil Rights Movement, to World War II, to the Great Depression, and they say, quote, _0, __, but here's the truth they won't tell you. Those crises happened when Americans still fundamentally believed in the same country, when we still shared core values, when we still trusted institutions to eventually do the right thing, when we still saw each other as fellow citizens who happened to disagree, not as existential threats to each other's existence. None of that is true anymore. We don't live in the same America. We don't even live in the same reality. And the people in power know this. They absolutely know this. But they can't admit it because admitting it means acknowledging that they've failed, that the systems they've been running have broken down, that the social contract they promised to uphold has been shredded. So instead, they gaslight us. They tell us the economy is strong while we can't afford groceries. They tell us democracy is working while we watch our votes feel increasingly meaningless. They tell us to stay calm while they quietly prepare for the worst. And that's the part that should terrify you. Because if you look at what the government is actually doing, not what they're saying, but what they're doing, you'll see that they're preparing for massive civil unrest. They're militarizing police forces. They're conducting domestic surveillance on an unprecedented scale. They're building frameworks for martial law. They're getting ready for something, even if they won't tell you what. Let's talk about the data, because this isn't just a feeling. This is measurable. Recent polls show that over 40% of Americans believe civil war is likely in the next decade. 40%. That's not a fringe minority. That's not extremists on the edges. That's nearly half the country looking at where we are and where we're headed and concluding that violent conflict is coming. Gun sales have shattered records year after year. We're not talking about small increases. We're talking about tens of millions of firearms sold annually, with first-time buyers making up a huge portion of those sales. People who never owned guns, who maybe even opposed gun ownership, are now arming themselves. Why? Because they don't feel safe. Because they don't trust that the government will protect them, because they're preparing for a scenario where they'll need to protect themselves and their families. Ammunition is constantly sold out. Go to any gun store, check any online retailer, the shelves are empty. People aren't just buying one box. They're buying hundreds of rounds, thousands of rounds. They're stockpiling because they believe they're going to need it. Survivalist and prepping communities have exploded. What used to be niche forums and small groups has become a mainstream movement. Millions of people are learning survival skills, building food storage, creating bug-out plans, preparing for societal collapse. And these aren't paranoid loners. These are doctors, teachers, engineers, nurses, accountants, everyday professionals who are quietly preparing for the worst while hoping for the best. Private security and gated communities are booming. The wealthy are buying up remote properties, building bunkers, hiring security teams. They're getting ready to disconnect from society entirely if things fall apart. And if the people with the most resources, the most information, the most access to power are preparing for collapse, What does that tell you about what they think is coming? Now let me tell you about the biggest driver of this fear, the thing that nobody in power wants to address honestly, the economic collapse that's already happening. They tell you inflation is under control. They tell you the job market is strong. They tell you the economy is recovering. But you know that's not true because you live it every day. Your paycheck doesn't go as far as it used to. The groceries that cost $100 2 years ago now cost $150, $170. Rent has become unaffordable for millions of people. Home ownership has become a fantasy for an entire generation. Healthcare costs are bankrupting families. Education is leaving students with crushing debt and no job prospects. The middle class is being systematically destroyed, and everyone can feel it. But here's what they won't tell you. This isn't a temporary problem. This isn't inflation that will come back down. This is the result of decades of terrible decisions, corrupt policies, and a system designed to extract wealth from working people and transfer it to the top. And it's not getting better. It's getting worse. The wealth gap is wider than it's been since the 1920s. Think about that. The last time we had this level of inequality, we had the Great Depression. We had massive social upheaval. We had the rise of radical political movements. History shows us exactly what happens when too much wealth concentrates in too few hands while the masses struggle to survive. It leads to revolution. And people understand this now. They understand that the game is rigged, that the system isn't broken, it's working exactly as designed to benefit the wealthy and powerful at everyone else's expense. They understand that voting doesn't change it, protesting doesn't change it, working harder doesn't change it. And when people believe the system can't be reformed, that's when they start looking for alternatives. That's when things get dangerous. But the economic crisis is only one piece of this. The other piece, and this might be even more important, is the complete collapse of institutional trust. Think about every major institution in American life. Think about whether you trust it, really trust it. Do you trust the government to tell you the truth? After decades of lies about wars, about surveillance, about corruption, about almost everything that matters? No, you don't. And you'd be foolish too. Do you trust the media to report facts objectively? When you can watch the same event covered by different outlets and hear completely different stories, completely different interpretations, sometimes completely different facts? When you know that most media is owned by a handful of corporations with their own agendas? No, you don't. Do you trust the healthcare system? When insurance companies profit from denying care, when pharmaceutical companies charge obscene prices for life-saving medications, when medical debt is the leading cause of bankruptcy? No, you don't. Do you trust the justice system? When you can see with your own eyes that there's one set of rules for the wealthy and powerful and another for everyone else? When justice depends more on how much you can afford to pay for lawyers than on guilt or innocence? No, you don't. Do you trust law enforcement to protect you? When police departments are militarized, when accountability is almost non-existent, when communities feel occupied rather than served? No, many people don't. Do you trust elections? This is the big one. When nearly half the country believes the last presidential election was stolen, when the other half believes the one before that was compromised by foreign interference, when everyone agrees that money buys political influence but we do nothing about it, how can we trust that democracy is actually working? And when you don't trust any of the institutions that are supposed to hold society together, when you believe the entire system is corrupt and broken, what's left? What holds us together then? The answer is nothing. And everyone feels that void. Here's what really scares me, though. It's not just that we don't trust institutions. It's that we don't trust each other. We've been sorted into tribes. Red versus blue. Liberal versus conservative. Urban versus rural. And we don't just disagree with the other side anymore. We despise them. We see them as stupid, as evil, as a threat to everything we hold dear. We can't have conversations across these divides anymore. We can't find common ground. We can't even agree on basic facts because we consume completely different information. We live in separate realities, and those realities are increasingly incompatible. And here's the terrifying part. Both sides are convinced that if the other side wins, America is finished. If you talk to people on the left, They genuinely believe that conservatives are fascists trying to install an authoritarian regime. If you talk to people on the right, they genuinely believe that liberals are destroying traditional America and attacking their fundamental freedoms. When both sides believe the other represents an existential threat, when both sides believe that losing means the end of everything they value, compromise becomes impossible, coexistence becomes untenable, and conflict becomes inevitable. This is what civil wars are built on, not just economic hardship, not just political disagreement, but the fundamental belief that you cannot share a country with people who want to destroy everything you believe in. And we're sitting on so many potential triggers right now, so many scenarios that could light the fuse. Another contested election. What happens in 2024 or 2028 when the losing side doesn't accept the results? When both sides claim fraud? When both sides believe democracy has been stolen? We came dangerously close on January 6, 2021. What happens next time when people are even more prepared, even more convinced, even more desperate? Economic collapse. What happens when the financial system finally breaks? When the stock market crashes, when banks fail, when people's savings disappear? We saw what happened in 2008, and that was mild compared to what could happen. When people lose everything, when they have nothing left to lose, that's when things get violent. Major terrorist attack. What happens if there's another 9/11 level event? Do we trust that our response would be measured? That we wouldn't turn on each other? That we wouldn't use it as an excuse to settle scores and crack down on domestic enemies? Climate disasters. What happens when resources become scarce? When water runs out in major cities? When crop failures create food shortages? When climate refugees start moving in massive numbers? Competition for resources has started every war in human history. Government overreach. What happens when federal authorities push too hard? When they try to enforce policies that a significant portion of the population sees as tyrannical? When people decide they've had enough and start fighting back? Any one of these scenarios could be the spark. And we're not dealing with just one. We're dealing with all of them simultaneously, all building pressure, all moving us closer to a breaking point. So here's the truth they won't tell you. The people in power see all of this. They know how close we are to the edge. They know the economic system is unsustainable. They know trust has collapsed. They know division is accelerating. They know we're headed for crisis, but they're not trying to fix it. They're trying to manage it. They're trying to maintain control for as long as possible while preparing for what comes next. The military has been wargaming domestic conflict scenarios. The Department of Homeland Security has been preparing for mass civil unrest. Wealthy elites have been buying property in remote locations, in other countries, building escape plans. Politicians have been consolidating power, eroding civil liberties, building the infrastructure for authoritarian control. They're not trying to prevent civil war. They're trying to make sure they're on the winning side when it happens. And that's why millions of Americans have lost hope. Because they see that the people who could actually address these problems, the people with power, with resources, with platforms, aren't even trying. They're just positioning themselves to survive the collapse. Look, I don't want civil war. I don't want to believe it's coming. I don't want to live in a country that's so broken, so divided, so full of rage and despair that we turn on each other. But I also can't ignore what I see. I can't pretend everything is fine when it clearly isn't. I can't trust institutions that have repeatedly betrayed that trust. I can't believe in unity when I see nothing but division. What I can do is tell you the truth. The uncomfortable, terrifying, inconvenient truth that millions of Americans have already accepted. We are in serious trouble. The systems are failing. The divisions are real. The anger is justified. And the path we're on leads to a very dark place. The question is, what do we do about it? Do we accept that conflict is inevitable and just prepare to survive it? Do we withdraw, build our defenses, stockpile supplies, and wait for the storm? Or do we fight like hell to prevent it? Do we rebuild trust, even when it feels impossible? Do we reach across divides, even when it's uncomfortable? Do we demand real change from our institutions, even when we don't believe they'll deliver? Do we choose connection over tribalism, understanding over hatred, hope over despair? I don't know if we can pull back from this edge. I genuinely don't know if we have the collective will, the leadership, the time. But I know that if we don't try, if we all just accept that war is coming and prepare accordingly, then we guarantee it happens. Here's what I want you to take from this. You're not crazy for being worried. You're not paranoid for preparing. You're not alone in seeing what's happening. Millions of Americans share your concerns. They see the same warning signs. They feel the same dread. They understand that something fundamental has broken. But we still have agency. We still have choices. We still have the power to decide what kind of country this becomes and what kind of people we're going to be when things get hard. Prepare. Yes. Be ready for uncertainty. But don't give up on the possibility that we can be better than our worst fears. Don't accept that violence is inevitable. Don't stop building bridges, finding common ground, treating each other with basic humanity. Because the truth they won't tell you isn't just that civil war is possible, it's that preventing it is still possible too. But only if enough of us choose to fight for it. That's the truth. That's what millions of Americans are grappling with right now. And that's the conversation we need to be having. What do you think? Let me know in the comments, because we need to talk about this honestly. Without fear, without censorship, without pretending everything is fine when it isn't. We're in this together, whether we like it or not. And maybe remembering that is the first step back from the edge.